Jordan, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to dive into your journey with Manifold and really around how you were playing around with AI and data strategies. And I noticed Manifold has some really impressive partners: Google Cloud, Microsoft, Oracle. Really excited to dive into your journey. Just start off with what led you to join Manifold and really build out that advisory services line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a combination of the two earlier parts of my career. So I started my career off in California at an early stage technology company, understood what it looked like to go from with just really rapid growth. So we went from, I think I was around like employee 200, and we went from 200 to 2000 very quickly within 4 to 5 years, all on the backs of a technology solution, and then building kind of arms off of that technology solution. Once the company went public back in 2011, I transitioned my career and went back to business school. I did a part-time MBA, but at the same time, I also got involved in boutique consulting. And so cut my teeth on management consulting frameworks and skills and whatnot. And always was working at the tech company, but also at the management consulting firm with large enterprise customers. And what then I actually, the funny story of how I ended up at Manifold was I was in one of the founding partners of Manifold was a professor at Kellogg, and he was teaching a class on innovation, and I joined it. So I was a student in his first class that he ever taught, and it was about leading and managing and building innovation teams and opportunities. And basically, we got to know each other, had beers after class a bunch of different times, and found that there was a synergy between my skill set, which was understanding and working with C-suite in the enterprise, and bringing that startup innovation methodology and mindset into the enterprise. And so we joined together about a decade ago and built the first part of Manifold, which was effectively, we were basically a startup team in a bot enterprise.
I love that. And that means you were a good student. If you end up getting a job at the end of the class, you did well. Having worked in my career at some point years ago, I was in a skunk works, right? And so it's a big corporate $1 billion company, and they try to put somebody outside the rules to get something interesting done. Obviously, there are problems. There's kind of problems with there's downsides to every approach. And I see there are lots of firms that do this, like startup in a box. We'll do the whole ideation, marketing. Can you talk about the pros and cons of those different approaches, and particularly what sets the way you do it apart?
Yeah, I think one thing maybe just a caveat is like we've evolved our firm as well. So we were doing a lot of startup in the box type stuff, building new businesses and building new products, always around technology and data analytics platforms. And that was really a trend of skunkworks and innovation teams at enterprise, probably for the first, call it 5 to 7 years of the business. With as COVID came and things transitioned and market forces changed and whatnot, like we've pivoted as well, in the sense of we still do and have the same like methodology and ethos as a company to move fast and build and fix things from a technology perspective. It's just, I think what we've seen in general is companies have really pulled back on that like CapEx type spending around innovation.
It's too risky in the climate right now, it seems.
Yeah, you just have, and you still have to do that stuff. Obviously, like with Gen AI and lots of like evolutions in technology, like you need to be on the cutting edge of those things. I think that the difference now is that they very much have to connect into a business case at the enterprise, as opposed to before you were almost creating business cases and taking almost like a VC mindset of you're always finding the problem, but almost like trying to solve the problem as you go, as opposed to on this side right now, it's like a very clear use case, problem and solution and whatnot that you have to be able to fit into to do some of this like innovation. It's still innovative technology. It's just in a different context though.
I imagine, I'm just thinking back to writing business cases, and then you're trying to imagine the like net present value of this thing. You don't know if you will even be able to sell it yet. So there's a lot of assumptions baked in versus saying, look, we already identified this problem or cost center that we're going to innovate around, fix.
I think especially as the pace of technology and change, everything's moving so quickly. So there still is a, with the enterprises and executives that we work with, it's oftentimes like they need to stay on the cutting edge and want to innovate, and they're innovative folks and people. They just, again, it just very much has to be tied to, we've got to go find the generative AI use cases that fit within their workflows that they can apply, that then have, to your point, like an ROI associated with them and solve real problems. And we work in a lot of industries that have like very pervasive problems that technology can solve. And that's where we've been able to accelerate a little bit.
And could you share maybe one of your favorite stories about a digital transformation project that was particularly impactful, just to give some concrete examples of what this can look like?
Yeah, sure. So we do a lot of work in healthcare with hospitals and health systems, and I think one of the biggest things that we've done recently was to help the health system with their referral kind of process and platform. So previously, the methodology and way that they were referring and capturing patients and moving them into their facilities was fairly antiquated, very manual, very kind of spreadsheet oriented, and it was if and people heavy, right? And so just a traditional, really kind of digital transformation project. But we came in there, used a lot of the management consulting methodologies, right? So current state, future state. So we looked at their current state process. We then mapped out future state, and we were able to build technology that both better kind of routes and moves the patients along. It decreases staff time. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it has an ROI related to it brings more patients into their facilities, which in turn it's a for-profit hospital. So so that translates into revenue. And then we've been able to, I think, layer on a variety of different, both like generative AI tooling into that tool and like digital transformation project. And then on top of that as well, some predictive analytics stuff to help them identify what patients on the front end are best for them in their facility. And so I think that's just like it's a small example of an area within the client that we were able to really look at their process and systems, people process and systems, and really use digital transformation, use data, and use software to enhance and improve that process moving forward.
Love that. I love that. And I'm just imagining from my knowledge of lean and hospitals, there's so many things where the operations are great. It's just that it's a lot of people having to be trained and manage them and make sure they're following the processes. And then sometimes you're able to completely swap one of those systems for a computer system. And it's the kind of work everyone hates anyway. You know what I mean? It's like everybody usually loves these.
Yeah, I think the other part that oftentimes with any sort of like digital transformation or innovation that's really overlooked though, it is the implementation and change management aspect of things. So yes, you're right. People are very excited about parts of their job that are like tedious and manual and take a ton of time. However, people are creatures of habit. And as you're introducing new things and new pieces of technology and new ways of working, you have to connect the dots for them. And really, I'll steal this from one of our executives that we work with, but like really it's about the business case, but it's also about the why around things. So like, why is this helping them? Why is it creating more efficiency? And for many people, I'll just keep going in the healthcare aspect, especially on the clinical side of the house, like they are there because they have a mission and they want to help people get better. And so you have to connect the technology and the business case back into that why for people in a number of different industries, but specifically in healthcare.
I'm glad you brought up change management, because anytime you do anything amazing with technology, at the end of the day, somewhere there's a person involved and they have to change their behavior. Otherwise, nothing really valuable happens. How do you facilitate the change management element?
I think that it's a lot of just that there's technology involved, obviously, with learning management systems and training and different things like that. But at the end of the day, I think it's just a lot of hard work and energy and effort related to finding the right people that can influence change. And there's also there's many different ways to do change management. But like in general, I think we try to give our clients options on ways of approaching things. There's top down, there's bottom up, there's carrot stick. And so trying to give that frameworks around how to think about things oftentimes allows us to then, when they click into particular things, hey, that's how we want to run our methodology from a change management perspective. And then again, I think especially with change management, where technology is trying to automate away a lot of people, but with change management as well, it's about there's like key people that are parts of that and need to be a part of that change management. Again, whether it's top down or bottom up, like you really need to understand who you're talking to, why it would motivate them to use the technology, how it's going to make their job better, how it's going to impact the end results, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think it's again, like thinking about the why statement, it's like getting into the why from a change management.
That's very powerful because it can go around lots of issues. As long as the why makes sense, people can flex to it. How is Manifold right now finding net new clients and staying top of mind?
Yeah, so our business historically has largely been like very referral based. We've had many clients for 5, 10, 10 years or so from a client perspective, and we continue to deliver for them. So that often just leads itself to lots of referrals. And we've more proactively asked for referrals recently from because we do good work for them. I think the other part of our business development apparatus that is still it's still evolving right now. I think you mentioned at the beginning, like we have partnerships with Google and Microsoft and Oracle. We are working hard at those partnerships to try to deliver for those, go hand and walk hand in hand with those partners into some of our clients and then into some of the leads that we have. And there are unique ways to create like a win really when you bring kind of those partners into the mix. And that's something that you've it's a strategy that we've been pushing on recently, and it's starting to pay off from a business development standpoint.
Those are the best. Those are the best when everybody somehow is able to do something they couldn't otherwise when you have the right partners and the right channels. When you're looking at just enterprise transformation, where do you see it headed? Do you see any major shifts in the way that it operates?
Yes, major shifts just because there's so much happening from a technology perspective. I think it is really about this automation and I mean kind of buckets of there are lots of things that can be done from an automation perspective. There are lots of things that can be done from a predictive standpoint, and then there are lots of things that can be done from a generative AI standpoint to really like create and streamline processes and opportunities and growth. So I think it's a very unique time to me in enterprise transformation and innovation. It's just a different mindset than what it was 10 years ago, where it was like everyone knew wanted to innovate and knew you needed to innovate, but it didn't necessarily have to be connected to, and I'm making a very broad statement there because but it was a lot of kind of innovation for show. We need to innovate and we need to have we need to have a venture studio. We need to have a skunkworks opportunity. And now I think it is part of it is also a lot of this technology that is happening right now is very connected into like specific use cases at companies. And so it's a lot easier to understand. But I also then think it's like the macro here is people need to be focused on their businesses and their bottom lines and things like that a little bit more than probably previously.
Makes sense. And you mentioned, I think we talked about healthcare examples. Are there other sectors that you focus in where you have expertise, a special expertise?
So from a firm standpoint, I mean, we're 80% healthcare, and then say we focus primarily on the healthcare side of the house. We do work in other industries. We have some work in the business services side of the house. We work within within oil and gas as well with a couple clients.
Mhm.
But in general, we're pretty focused on healthcare from a client perspective, and especially also within our partner network with Google and Microsoft and Oracle. We're very connected with our clients on the healthcare side.
Great. And do you see that the technology landscape has evolved in terms of actually, let me start over. I don't like that question since we already covered it. Hold on. Here's one. So when we look at after you make these changes, scaling them up, what are common challenges that organizations face when they're trying to scale these kind of digital initiatives?
Yeah, I think it goes back into the implementation and change management. It's just like an adoption of these technologies and changing behaviors and making people understand that this is going to help them do their jobs better and more effectively and more efficiently, and it's better for the company. I think right now it's also though it's a challenging time for people because there is the kind of this fear of getting automated away from a technology perspective. I don't have a crystal ball and I can't predict things but I think that fear to some extent it's very real.
Let's dive into that because
Yeah.
I hear that I've heard this. I guess maybe it's a talking point that like, hey, AI isn't about jobs, we're augmenting. But at the same time, I think everyone sees that there have been quite a few layoffs in very specific like job functions. And if you're a business owner, you're not, you want to get the work done efficiently. And then I also, one other little thing to add in there, I'm just thinking about at the end of the day, software to me is labor reduction. That's the entire point of 100% of software. How do you think about that?
I think that's our business, right? At the end of the day, it's like I work with executives and enterprises and help them to understand. And again, everything we talk to them about has to be rooted in the business case. And most of the time, rooted in business case is how do you either take what multiple you are doing and automate it so that you either don't need those people, or you can reorient those people to other jobs, or also then how do you supercharge particular people. So we work with a lot of private equity backed healthcare. Private equity backed healthcare company it's tough, right? Because private equity says grow, and at the same time they say cut costs, right? From a business case standpoint, oftentimes when we're walking into those customers, it's not about how do we automate and eliminate jobs per se. It's how do we people more to do more, right? Because I have a client. I was just texting with my client this morning, and this conversation made me think about him. Like he has 17 jobs, like 17 different titles. Like I actually don't. I've worked with the guy for 7 years now. Texting relationship, I don't know everything that he does, and sometimes I'm like, why are you doing that? And I think it's like, how can we augment him with technology, and how do we help him get more leverage? Because his 17 jobs, not every job is equal. He able to stack rank and prioritize those things. And if he can push some of those things down to technology, it makes him much more efficient and allows him to go to the top of the stack things that are most.
This makes me think of the classic, I think the canonical example now is the sales, because you still need a human, especially if it's very expensive. And so you're not getting rid of that touch point, but at the same time, you don't want them looking up prospect details, researching. All these things can be automated.
Yeah, we haven't, again, because we haven't really like flexed our outbound muscle a ton and recently until we're starting to. So yeah, we historically have had senior consultative sales sellers. And so to your point, you're going to need those people because they're going to have to get into the meeting. They're going to have to identify and ask the questions and whatnot. I think that when we think about, okay, how do we fill the top of the funnel? It's hard, right? I get 7,000 sales emails every single day from all kinds of different things. And half the time, oftentimes I'm in, everybody's in sales, but like I'm in sales, right? I'm a partner. I have I have to generate more stuff, right? So I've spent some time and I always I don't read every email, but I read a decent amount. And half the time it's like very clear. It's like, you obviously haven't looked at our company at all. You're just firing like spam and what. Then to the point, like I think you have to figure out how do you automate and make it like custom. I think that's a hard nut to crack.
This has been fascinating. And before we wrap up, I want to know what excites you the most about technology in 2025. It's a crazy year right now. Everything's changing so fast.
I think what excites me right now is we're just getting and cracking into how some of this emerging technology is connecting into like business use cases and how it can really be applied. So I think in the next year to 2 years or so, you're going to see a lot of the stuff that seemed like almost kind of like fantasy become a reality. I can even see that in the sense of just my workflow. So I don't use ChatGPT. I use Claude. It's just open all the time. That's a great use case though, how it's become part of my day, part of my work.
When I talk to you, it's like it's the other window.
It helps get you up to speed on things. It helps you sound more informed. It helps you wrap your head around particular things. Mm-hmm. And so I think with a lot of these new use cases and stuff like that, there's lots of opportunity to then apply it to business and actually see like business outcomes start to be transformed.
Thank you so much, Jordan.
You got it, man.